Well, hello again. Hats of the 20th century here, and we were talking about the bowler the last time we were together. And it was introduced as the riding bowler, commissioned by a wealthy landowner that wanted something better for his groundskeepers, something that would deflect branches. And it came with a cord, this is just something I've made, with a button at the end that could be tucked around the hat. Unwound and put into the lapel buttonhole of the jacket so that the hat they wouldn't have to ride back and get their cap. It would just be hanging from them. So that was a wonderful idea. And it was introduced actually as the riding bowler, since that was the reason for the whole thing. And here I did notice in my Norman Rockwell book, there's a picture called Boy and Baby Carriage, where there's a picture of him with a bowler that has the guard cord on it. Got it? There we go. All right, just wanted you to see that. So it shows up every now and then, and honestly, fedoras and other hats, I think the Hamburg has one too, of the 20th century have remembrances of that original riding bowler. Now this was tucked in, a little button on a cord, but I've undone it and I'm not worried about if I ever get it put back together right. But as you can see, it's just a facsimile, what is called a survival. And a survival is something that still survives but has no technical uses. It's just a remembrance of days gone by. So you might find that once in a while if you're looking at an old hat. Okay, I think we're really done with the fedora. I might lay it over there. Okay, eventually the bowler was simply called a bowler. They lost the riding business. And it became, we did that already. It became the favorite for all casual activities, especially to wear to the Derby horse races at Epsom Downs. That Derby form of horse racing came to our country in the 1890s, and with it came the wearing of the bowler hat to the Derby. So of course we Americans just called them derbies. So it's a bowler across the pond, but it's a derby here, but it is the same hat. There we go. I think that'll do it for the bowler. It sort of unseated the top hat. And just as the bowler had replaced the top hat, along came the Hamburg to sort of replace the bowler. The Hamburg, let's get my notes going here, was first manufactured in the 1890s in Bad Hamburg, Germany, a factory called Mokel or something. And it became the most popular, became the most favorite hat for King Edward VII of England. And therefore, the popularity of the Hamburg rose to great heights. He liked to take his holidays at the spas in Hamburg, and the hat factory there, it even is, once in a while you read that he had something to do with the design of the Hamburg, but I don't know, take that with a grain of salt. But a Hamburg, unlike a bowler, which is a hard hat, I think we snapped it to prove that. It's a hard felt. There we go. A Hamburg is a softer felt, like what's on a fedora. And if you pop the top off, you see that it's almost shaped like a bowler, only with a larger brim. Let's see, do we need to say anything more about that? Other than it was King Edward's favorite hat and very popular at this time. So, and I think then that takes us back to ladies' hats. How nice that's going to be. All righty, we got the men's hats out of the way. And one of the first ones I have here for ladies is beautiful blue velvet. I hope you can see that color. It's so rich. And it's got a gathered in the center lining like the hats of this time typically do. And you can see from the worn velvet the wire frame underneath, because most hats are built on a wire frame. So anyway, speaking of, this is just a silly bit, but I've marked the back here. The seam in the lining always indicates the back of the hat. Now this one wasn't even sewn shut, and I saw a piece of paper in here. I was so excited. I thought, oh my goodness, when I get that home, this will be who made it and when or whatever. There's not a word on this piece of paper. Not even the instructions to where the gold is buried. Nothing. Big disappointment. But anyway, those things happen. Alrighty, let's put it on where it was meant to be in the back this way. Let's see if we get her. There we are. Get her flaps down. Very pretty velvet hat with black glass beading all around it and a little bit of tired plume. That's what we have on everybody, is tired plume. It's very pretty this way, but I hope that she experimented a little and maybe wore it opposite once in a while. Yeah. Because that was also a very good look at this time period. Very English Tudor, and that was in style then too. Okay. Now I'm very glad that I have a picture of my great-grandmother, and she's wearing a very fancy little hat. Very busy with upright feathers and ribbons and things, and that's the way the style was. Now, I'd love to have had this very hat, but you know, that just can't happen. I'll leave it right there. But I went to the antique store and I was lucky enough to buy someone else's grandmother's hat. You know how that goes. It's very similar to grandmother's. Well, before I put it on her, I'm going to have you notice, if you can, back in that corner, all the needle holes in it. Okay, the lining is missing, if it ever had one. Oh yeah, I think from the threads there, the lining was torn out. All those needle holes show you how they would dress and redress their hats over and over again. Take the body of the hat, but keep changing the feathers and the bows and everything you could. It was the original recycling and definitely a way to economize. So there we are, a little hat very near like what grandmother had, with a little upswept brim and a squared off crown. Now here's another one from this time period, another old sturdy felt. Oops, knocked my little hat pin out of it. I have to put that down there. Very sturdy felt. Funny little lining in the middle. And this old hat, all it had left was a few tired plumes on it when I got it. So, let's see if I can see where I remember to. Oh yeah, I'll put it right there. So I'm the one that redressed this one with fabric and fruit that I felt had kind of a rather antique look. It's a very pretty hat, very typical of what you'd see in the catalogs at the turn of the century. And also at this time, give you the front here, the ladies like to wrap themselves in these long, or these huge veils. There we go. Let's see if I can get it around her without getting caught in the fruit. Alright, I think we made it. Wrap their hat in these long veils, and this is where I need that pin just to, they do it in a much nicer way, but I'm just going to do it kind of sloppy here. Isn't that pretty? Now, it wasn't for mourning, because that would be a more opaque veil, but it was just for style, and it was gorgeous. So they bring it in tight around the throat, and I've seen that they can just tie them in a gob that hangs out the back. I should have marked that page to show you. But one way or another, they brought them in tight around the throat. And there they were, all set for a day. Well, I don't think I could have done this much more inefficiently. There we go. There they are, all set for a day that didn't involve eating, or I would think even a sip of tea. But it was gorgeous. And in the Harper's Bazaar of June 1899, I'm going to try to find this, put this somewhere where you can focus in on it, in case people want to notice or read it closer. I found this cute poem about the miseries of wearing a veil. And I won't put you through the misery of having, I wish I could hold it still, of having me read the whole thing, but there's a couple of passages. It's quite long. It's very cute, though. Do you suppose I like the feel of it rubbing against my nose? forever catching on my eyelashes, my eyelash tips, persistently adhering to my lips. 'Tis while the ill-dialed blackness of its lace makes grimy smudges on my face, or if the veil be white, itself smudges till it's a sight. Why do I wear it? Why? Anyway, boy, I held that really nice and still, didn't I? Possibly you'd be able to read it, or look up a Harper's Bazaar, June 1899. And it's by Carol Wells. A very cute poem. Now, I have a couple of pictures I did mark in the catalogs. Here we go. There, you stand over there. Here in the 1897 catalog page, we have illustrated how they wore their veils like that. Got it? Okay. And then even 5 years later, there, I just curl it around. In 1902, we're still wrapping our faces in these huge veils. Did you see it? Okay. There we go. So, it's not just a figment of my imagination, it's something they really did. Okay, now we'll just leave those two and go to the, yep, we'll go down to this beauty. In fact, I think I'll take Grandma's off. Well, maybe I can put it on the lamp. There. It's not Grandma's, I just pretend that it's Grandma's. Let's go to this one now. This is our first beaver felt of the show. A beautiful hat with, you can see, ivory lace, a tie around it, another tired old plume, gathered in the center lining. And I hope that you can see, I wish you could feel this super soft beaver fur felt. It's not the animal's pelt, it's a fur felt made from beaver fur. Let's see if we can put it on her. Alrighty. Check my seam in the back. It would go something like this. A beautiful hat. There we go. And I'm going to spin her around a little bit. There we go. Got it a little too low. There we are. Now I should explain a little bit about fur felts. Yeah. I'll bring this up so you can see what I'm doing. Okay. Okay. All right. Beaver fur was the most desirable fur to make fur felts. It had been forever, because the hair follicles, or what they called, they're notched. They are also called, I don't know, little hooks, but they're notched in a way that the hair follicles interlock so tightly that it makes the strongest possible product. And a nap can be raised off of this fur felt without compromising the durability of the felt. It is absolutely stunning and really kind of unbelievable. Okay, it had been the choice forever, but until they nearly ran the North American beaver into extinction in the 1800s, they'd been using beaver. Now they had to start using more rabbit and other small mammals for their fur needs. And that definitely made a beaver fur felt even more exclusive and more expensive. And really quite moth-proof too, being a fur felt hat. Okay, I guess that about did it for that. And explaining the fur felt, you can Google all these things too. Another thing, when I got this hat from eBay, I was so surprised to see this kind of shiny ornament thing, which I hadn't really seen in the photo well enough. So at first I thought, but then I realized this is a real bonus. This is one of the first synthetics that are now making a showing in millinery as ornaments and accents. And I don't know much. I'm not an expert on synthetics. I know Bakelite came into being in 1907, but this would probably be a little sooner. And I know that a fella named John W. Hyatt invented the first synthetic polymers in 1869. So you see, the works were in the making here of synthetics. And soon we would have a lot of synthetics coming by the 1920s, and we no longer had to rely on natural products, you know, wire and wood and things like that. So let's see. I wonder if I could go one more time. Let's try another 2 minutes worth of time. Okay. So there we are. We've done with that. Now let's do what kind of was a game changer for hats. A hat called a Merry Widow. We'll give that back to her, by golly. Here we go. A Merry Widow. And I just have to tell you, I got this on a garage sale. And the gal wanted me to understand that was $8. Not just $1 like the other hats. Oh, okay, that'll be fine. Anyway, beautiful black velvet Merry Widow hat. They're usually black. They're usually floral and ostrich on them. And a hat like this would have been called a Gainsborough from the paintings that always showed a lady in a black hat until 1907 when it was worn in an operetta. Now let's see if I think it's Sarah Bernhardt. No, that's a trilby. You know what? Oh, Lily Elise wore this in a operetta named Merry Widow, and it was such a hit that from there forward it became known. A black hat, a large black hat, became known as a Merry Widow, and it signaled the way to the large hats that we have in the next decade, the 1910 decade, and that was a good thing because we all love those big hats. So maybe we will stop there, and when we come back we'll talk about the large crowns of the Edwardian period, because we're in the Edwardian period now, the guy that liked a Homburg. Okay, thank you. We'll see you again.